My name is Ava Morgan. I spent my entire youth writing lines of code, algorithms, and updates, not for fame but to save the company that carried my family's name from bankruptcy. And yet, on the night of its 30th anniversary, right in the middle of applause and spotlight, my father stepped onto the stage and said a single sentence that turned my whole body cold. The next CEO of Morgan Dynamics is your sister, Chloe. She had never written a single line of code, never sat in a strategic meeting, never pulled an all-nighter to meet a deadline. Yet they handed her an entire empire I rebuilt from rubble, at the cost of my own youth. Have you ever been pushed aside by your own family, from something you built with your own hands? If you've ever felt that way, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to this channel. The story I'm about to tell isn't just about betrayal. It's about how I ended an entire dynasty. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, just like always. The parking lot was still quiet, the sun barely peeking over the trees in the distance, and I kept the same habit I'd always had, starting the day before anyone else so I'd have a few quiet hours to focus on system checks, performance metrics, and security flags before the rest of the team came in. I scanned my badge at the glass door leading to the engineering floor. Red light. I tried again. Once more. This time, not only did it fail to open, the panel didn't respond at all, as if it no longer recognized me. I looked up. In that moment, I knew something was wrong. Not a system error. Not maintenance. Deliberate. I walked around to the main lobby. The new receptionist smiled politely but didn't say a word. I stepped into the elevator and pressed floor 7, the engineering and executive suite. When the doors opened, my desk was gone. Everything had vanished. No monitor, no personal server, no whiteboard, not even the little cactus I planted in an old coffee cup. The space where I had worked for years now stood empty, like I had never existed. I turned to the office next door, the door slightly ajar. A familiar voice floated out. "Oh, you're here already?" Chloe stood up from my old chair. She was wearing a beige suit, glossy heels, and her hair curled in soft waves, just like the fashion magazines love to label power woman chic. My laptop was gone. In its place sat a brand new rose gold machine next to a steaming cup of matcha latte. I stood still in the doorway, my voice dropping low. "Where's my desk?" She shrugged like she was talking about switching jackets. "Dad said there's been some restructuring. You're not going to be on this floor anymore." "I'm the Chief Technology Officer," I replied slowly. "Where exactly are you sending me?" Chloe smiled and walked around the desk toward me. "You'll still support the company, just remotely. Think of it as technical consulting. You're way too smart, Ava, to be stuck in management politics. That's not your thing." I didn't respond. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed calm. "And who decided this?" She tilted her head, giving me a soft, amused smile. "You've seen it yourself. Dad trusts me now. I'll be handling strategic direction. Can help in your own way." "Oh, almost forgot." Chloe reached over and picked up a slim envelope from the desk, handing it to me. "From Dad. He said to give it to you personally." I took it. Opened it. Inside was a card printed with gold lettering, "Thank you for your contributions," and a $50 bill folded neatly in quarters. I stared at that bill like it had just crawled out of some tasteless joke. $50. For building the entire system infrastructure. 4 nights spent patching security bugs. For turning the company around when it was inches from collapse. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. I looked up, my eyes meeting Chloe's. She didn't flinch. Her gaze was almost relieved, like she had finally gotten this over with. "I think you should take some time off," she said quietly. "Do the things you love. Keep writing your open source stuff. Besides..." She turned her back, pretending to check her phone. "The system's stable now." I let out a quiet laugh. There was nothing funny about it. "I see," I said, voice low. I placed the card and the 50 back on the desk, lining them up neatly. Chloe looked up. "Where are you going?" "I don't need an office," I said. "Just a quiet place to observe." I turned and walked away. Each step echoed off the marble hallway in a silence that felt unnaturally heavy. I didn't yell. I didn't demand. I didn't cry. Because in that moment, anger wasn't what I felt. It was something deeper. So untouchable. And in the middle of that stillness, I started writing the first line of another story. One without them. Without cheap thank yous. without names clinging to power while stepping on real value. Just me and the one thing I had always trusted. My mind, my time, and the quiet certainty that truth always finds its rightful place. I moved down to a forgotten corner on the ground floor, somewhere between the supply closet and the maintenance hub. No nameplate. No title. Just a small desk barely wide enough for a laptop and a few worn folders. No one asked if I needed anything. No one cared who I was. They thought I had disappeared. But I kept coming in every morning earlier than anyone. I did exactly what Chloe assigned, just enough remote technical support to avoid being accused of slacking. The rest of the time I watched. I took notes. I tracked every leadership meeting, every email forwarded carelessly, every financial report they thought I no longer had access to. They forgot that I had built the entire security system and had left a few hidden doors that only I knew how to open. Chloe's new friends started appearing regularly in strategy meetings. The first week, a platinum blonde woman with a high-pitched voice kept using the phrase, emotional markets, in executive briefings. I remembered her as a former regional sales rep for a multi-level cosmetics brand. Chloe named her head of marketing. The second week, a tall man in an open white linen shirt with 3 buttons undone and crystal bracelets suddenly became the head of corporate energy alignment. It took me a moment to recognize him. He was the same tarot reader Chloe followed on YouTube whenever she went through a breakup. The third week, HR got a new face. A woman in her early 30s who used to run a boutique yoga studio offering mind detox weeks in the mountains. She now called herself the Chief Culture Officer. I stayed at my little desk with my headphones in, pretending to debug error logs while listening to recordings of leadership meetings. Sometimes it felt like I was watching a satirical play, one I had once helped build the stage for, hang the lights and raise the curtain, and now I was just sitting quietly watching the audience laugh at a performance gone off script. Decisions started to leak out and so did the consequences. A $20 million contract with a major grocery chain in Chicago was lost simply because Chloe didn't respond to the email in time. The person overseeing the project at the time was their chief energy officer. The same guy who once posted a video saying, "Email is a low-vibration form of communication." A major investor pulled out after attending a product launch where Chloe opened the presentation with a slow-motion clip of herself stepping out of a car in a red dress, set to background music featuring Indian flutes. The engineering department, once under my management, spiraled into chaos. 3 of the top engineers resigned on the same day. I got a message from Riley, who had worked beside me for 5 years. "No one understands the system. They deleted a core file yesterday. All orders are delayed 48 hours. Ava, can you help?" I typed just 3 words, "I'm not allowed." He didn't respond. That afternoon I stayed late after hours. The sun had dipped below the buildings across the street. I opened my laptop and pulled up the original system design, then navigated to a hidden file, where I'd stored everything I had never deployed. The original version, unregistered, untouched by the company's servers. The version I had quietly improved line by line, logic by logic each time I felt pushed aside. I read the final comment I had written to myself 2 years ago. "Doesn't need approval. Just needs to work." A soft breeze slipped in through the cracked window. And in that moment I wasn't angry anymore. All that remained was a sharp clarity, the same kind I had when I wrote my first line of code at 22, sitting in a cramped apartment, listening to the whir of a worn-out hard drive and sipping cold coffee. I no longer needed to fight for a seat. I was collecting evidence, not to ask them to take me back, but to quietly dismantle everything they were losing day by day. I glanced out the window and saw Chloe's car rolling past the main gate. Her headlights flashed across the company sign, "Morgan Dynamics. Motion is survival." A slogan I had written myself in the restructuring proposal years ago. Now it was just faded paint on a hollow surface. I turned off the screen and closed the laptop. They still thought I had walked away. They had no idea I was still here. And I was already rewriting the ending, not to reclaim a title but to erase everything that once reduced my work to a $50 gesture. The air had turned colder by the time I pulled up to the old warehouse, about a 40-minute drive from downtown. The metal roof had rusted through and the sign, "Morgan Storage Unit Number 2, hung crooked on a rotting wooden frame with part of the lettering blown off by wind. But inside I still remembered every floor tile, every wooden shelf where Riley and I once spent all night coding, powered only by a borrowed converter and a flickering old computer. I shut off the engine, pulled my coat over my shoulders, and stepped inside. The smell of dust and old machine oil still lingered, but oddly I felt calm. As if in this place, everything had once made sense. It had started here with honesty, not with the polished illusion Chloe was now pushing. Another car's headlights shone through the side window. Riley stepped out first, hair still messy as always, his dark hoodie faded at the elbows. Ethan followed, looking more polished, carrying a leather laptop bag and an expression of concern. "It's been a while," Riley said first, reaching out and resting a hand on my shoulder. "You still pick the old spot." "Still the safest," I answered softly, then pushed the door open and waved them inside. I spread a cloth over the old steel table, pulled a folder and a USB drive from my backpack. Ethan stared at the USB like it was some dangerous relic. "This is what you've been working on in secret?" he asked, voice dropping. "The original build," I said, pulling out a separate laptop, completely offline. "None of it has ever been synced to Morgan Dynamics' system. It's clean, safe. And now, it's complete." I powered it up. Under the yellow glow of the old filament bulb overhead, the interface lit up: real-time shipping flow maps, seasonal inventory prediction tools, an AI engine that optimized supply chains based on actual customer behavior. Ethan let out a soft exhale of surprise. This is faster than the current Morgan build. "And twice as secure," Riley added. "You layered encryption across processing tiers. It's incredibly adaptive. You kept all of this quiet." I nodded. "Not for revenge. I couldn't let them destroy what we believed in." Ethan pulled out a chair, leaned forward, elbows on the table. "What do you want from us, Ava? This is a massive project. No one builds it alone." I looked at both of them, the two who'd been there when the company was just a garage-sized office. They didn't need me to explain. "I want to start over," I said slowly. "From scratch. With the right people. No old structures. No dynasties. I want a place where value isn't measured by a last name or the kind of shoes you wear to a pitch meeting." Riley smiled. "And what are you calling it?" I opened a drawer under the table, pulled out a bundle of papers tied with red string and handed it to them. The first sheet showed a logo sketch, a deep red circle surrounding a stylized dandelion. "Red Haven Logistics," I said. "Named after the town where my mom was born. She didn't leave much behind. But she left me one truth. Some things are never meant to be silenced." Ethan nodded slowly. "Red Haven. Sounds like a place where things can begin again." We sat there for almost 2 hours, planning everything step by step. Leasing a small starter office, selecting a private server system, pitching to investors who had already pulled out of Morgan Dynamics. Ethan would handle the legal and financial structure. Riley would oversee technical deployment. And me, I'd focus on the one thing I knew how to do best: build the core. When the streetlights outside started dimming, Riley closed his laptop. "You sure you want to go up against them? After all, they're still family." I was quiet for a moment. I looked toward the peeling wall where I'd once written the first version of the routing algorithm. "I don't want to fight them. But if they stand between me and what I believe is right, I won't step aside." Ethan stood and shook my hand firmly. "Then we start from this old warehouse. From Red Haven." I looked at the two of them again. Under the dusty light and worn-out shelves, I knew, if there was ever a moment to rewrite the legacy in my own name, this was it. And I wasn't going to waste it. Red Haven Logistics was quietly born. No ribbon cutting. No press release. No grand launch. We rented a small office on the 3rd floor of an aging building in the south end of the city, where the elevator jammed between floors and the AC rattled like an old truck. But in that atmosphere I felt free. No one looked at me with doubt. No one asked for approval before pushing out a new update. Our first client had just pulled out of Morgan Dynamics. They came with a broken data set, a frozen warehouse system, and more than 1,000 pending orders. I didn't promise much. Just said, "Give me 3 weeks." And 3 weeks later they sent a bouquet so large it blocked the office entrance. Rumors spread quickly. 2 more partners called. One of them was the largest shipping chain on the West Coast. Riley and I flew to San Diego to present the solution to the technical team. No flashy slides, no marketing tricks. Just a stable system, running 4 times faster than the current standard, with interfaces customized for each industry's needs. 3 weeks later, we secured a contract worth $80 million. That night, I sat alone in the office, the light from the window casting shadows on whiteboards filled with notes. I didn't play music, didn't open a bottle of wine, didn't throw a celebration. I just sat there looking at Riley's messy handwritten notes, Ethan's neat financial records, and the data diagrams I had sketched at 3 a.m. during a blackout. We had done it. A few weeks later, I noticed something was wrong. First came a call from a new client asking why their system crashed right after a patch update. But that patch wasn't approved by me nor deployed by Riley. Then an anonymous email landed in the tech inbox, attaching a familiar code snippet, a part of the core architecture I had designed privately and never published. It was encrypted using a method I created known only to me, Riley, and Ethan. I didn't say anything to Riley at first. Instead, I accessed the internal monitoring server and traced all admin logins over the last 30 days. Each account was protected by two-factor authentication, but I found a suspicious login at 2:15 a.m. on Sunday, from a secondary computer in Ethan's office. I called Ethan into the office that very afternoon. He came in wearing a white shirt and gray tie just like any other day. I pointed to the screen without saying a word. Ethan looked at it for a few seconds, then forced a smile. "Ava, hear me out. It's not what you think. I think you sold the source code to Chloe," I said, not taking my eyes off him. Ethan was silent. For a moment, his face softened, no longer trying to justify. "She offered a big investment. In exchange for some code snippets, Ava. We didn't lose anything. Red Haven's still growing. Everyone benefits." I stood up and pulled a contract from a drawer. "You signed a separate confidentiality agreement with me. Every line of code in this system was copyrighted under my name, before Red Haven was even established." Ethan paled. "What are you going to do?" "I already did. That night, I filed a lawsuit in federal court with full evidence. Original source code, registration timestamps, unauthorized access logs, emails exchanged between Ethan and Chloe, all recorded step by step by the monitoring system. The news exploded within 3 days. Chloe Morgan, CEO of Morgan Dynamics, accused of unauthorized use of competitors' source code. Ethan was indicted for breach of contract, intellectual property theft, and corporate espionage. Chloe, in a rushed press conference, managed to say only one sentence before reporters pressed her. "I don't know the origin of that code." The room echoed with one question. Then why was $200,000 transferred to Ethan Gray's account 3 days ago? She was speechless. The next day, Morgan Dynamics lost 2 major partners. Their stock fell 12% in one morning. Chloe disappeared from social media. Ethan, according to his lawyer, was awaiting trial and could face 3 years in prison. As for me, I returned to the office as usual, sat down, powered up, and kept working. No complaints. No regrets. I learned that not all betrayals happen on the battlefield. Some come from the people sitting at the same table, sharing coffee, writing the same lines of code. But I also learned that if you keep the original, the integrity, the perseverance, and faith in what you do, no one can steal what truly matters. The source code scandals spread like an underground wave, washing away everything Chloe and Victor had tried to hide. Within weeks, Morgan Dynamics lost nearly 30% of its market value. Investors pulled out en masse. 3 of the 5 chief engineers resigned. Chloe hastily organized a press conference in the lobby of the headquarters. Media crowded in, cameras pointed at the hastily built stage. She stepped up wearing a white blazer, thick makeup failing to mask the exhaustion around her eyes. "I just want to say," her voice trembled from the first sentence, "Red Haven stole everything from my family. My sister, the one I trusted, has robbed the company our father built his whole life. This is not fair competition. This is betrayal." She bowed her head. A tear rolled down her cheek. Cameras flashed non-stop. I watched that speech from my office, flat screen volume just loud enough to hear every word. But I felt nothing. No anger. No pity. No satisfaction. Only a deep silence inside me. A cold understanding that Chloe still didn't grasp the core truth. I never wanted to steal anything from her. I just took back what was never theirs. 2 weeks later, I was invited to be the keynote speaker at the Global Logistics Conference in Seattle. one of the industry's biggest events, gathering nearly every influential name in supply chain and transport technology. The conference hall was on the top floor of the Grand Pearl Hotel. When I stepped out of the elevator, light from hundreds of crystal chandeliers reflected on the marble floor, overwhelming the space. The event staff led me to the green room where the organizer's representative waited. "Morgan," he said respectfully. "The stage will be ready in 15 minutes. We hope your speech will inspire the next generation of engineers. Your team has done the unimaginable." I nodded softly, thanked him, and walked toward the large curtain behind the stage. Through the gap between the curtains, I saw the audience gradually filling the room. The front rows were reserved for CEOs, investors, and representatives from global corporations. I caught sight of Victor, my father, sitting in the second row on the left. He wore a gray suit, his hair grayer than before, his eyes no longer sharp as they once were. Beside him was Chloe, sitting straight, legs crossed, face trying to appear calm, but her clenched hands on her skirt betrayed her tension. At that moment, I didn't see them as the two people who took away my chance, nor as the ones who had crushed me with denial and a $50 bill. They were just two people sitting down there, facing the consequences of their own choices. "Please welcome our next keynote speaker," the host's voice rang out clearly. "The developer of a breakthrough logistics software system that helped over 60 global companies double their productivity in just 1 year. Co-founder of Red Haven Logistics, the company leading the market in both technology and business ethics, Ava Morgan." I stepped out to thunderous applause. The stage lights shone warmly and brightly on my face, as if the entire room was breathing with my every step. I stood in the middle of the stage, slightly bowing to the audience, then lifted my eyes to scan the faces, closely watching every small movement of mine. "I'm not good at speaking in front of crowds," I began, my voice calm. "I'm an engineer. I'm used to talking with data, with systems, with complex lines of code more than with human eyes." A few soft laughs echoed. "But today, I'm not standing here because of growth metrics or processing speed. I'm standing here because I believe in one thing: that fairness can be built. Not through power, but through perseverance. Not by the names printed on signs, but by the things we're willing to sacrifice to protect." I paused, my eyes meeting Victor's, watching me from below. There was a time I thought I needed to be recognized to feel worthy. That I had to prove to someone that I deserved it. Chloe slightly lowered her head. "But today, standing here, I know one thing for sure. I don't need them. I don't need to be chosen. I don't need to be kept. I still become myself." The auditorium fell completely silent for a few seconds. Then applause broke out, not wild like at a performance, but steady, strong, like deep agreement. I smiled. Not because of victory, but because I had traveled a path without losing myself. No need for revenge, no need to embarrass anyone. I only needed to keep moving forward, and let them stay behind with things long outdated. That morning, I was reviewing the quarterly financial report when Claire, my assistant, gently knocked on the door and quietly said, "Morgan, there are two people waiting outside. They don't have an appointment, but it's Mr. Victor and Ms. Chloe." I put down my pen. Not surprised. Not annoyed. Just a moment of stillness, like encountering someone from an old dream I thought I'd forgotten. "Let them in," I said softly. The door opened. My father stepped in first with the familiar posture, slightly hunched shoulders but steady steps. Chloe followed, her cream-colored dress wrinkled at the sleeves, eyes dark-circled beneath light makeup. They stopped before my desk. Both silent for a few seconds. The room sank into a silence that was hard to name. I didn't invite them to sit. I waited. Finally, Victor spoke first. "Can we talk for a few minutes?" I nodded, still keeping my gaze calm. He looked around the office, not to admire, but as if weighing his place in this room, a room he once could enter without permission. "Morgan Dynamics is not doing well," he said slowly. "Shareholders are losing faith. Nearly all senior staff are gone. Chloe can't carry it alone." I said nothing. Chloe rolled her eyes at me, her voice low and hoarse from exhaustion. "You won, Ava. Everyone sees that. But, can you come back now?" I looked straight at her without anger or bitterness. "Come back." Victor interrupted, faster this time. "We want to offer you a senior leadership position. Co-manage. Both sisters sharing the CEO role. Restore the family brand. I stood from my chair, walked to the window, silently watching the city waking up. Down there, people still moved, cars still lined up, unaware that in this high-rise room, the two who once pushed me into the abyss were now looking for a way back. Kosio. I turned back. After everything that happened, do you really think that's possible? Chloe sighed, eyes avoiding mine. We're family, Ava. No matter what, it shouldn't have gone this far. I looked at her a long time. Family. Those two words once held sacred meaning for me. But after everything, I understood. Blood isn't always honesty, and sometimes strangers protect you more than relatives. No, I said, still softly. I have no interest in managing alongside someone who betrayed me, who laughed when I was discarded like an extra. I built a company where no one needs to be the right person to be heard. Victor stiffened. Chloe stood, her face flushed. You're that petty? She said, voice trembling with anger. How much is enough for you? I answered, expression unchanged. I don't want more. I just don't want to go back to where my value was reduced to a wrinkled $50 bill. Chloe froze for a moment, then turned and walked out. As her footsteps faded down the hallway, Victor remained still. He quietly pulled a cream-colored envelope from his jacket pocket and placed it on the edge of the desk. No hurry, no words. I looked at him. What's this? He didn't answer right away. His eyes no longer carried the calculating, controlling look I once knew. Instead, it was something quiet, somewhat helpless. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just hope you understand, not everything is as you think. I picked up the envelope but didn't open it yet. Victor turned away, walking slowly toward the door. He paused, hand resting on the doorknob, then spoke a sentence I had never heard from him before in my life. Ava, if your mother were alive, she'd be very proud. The door closed gently behind him, so softly I wasn't sure if I heard it right. I stood by my desk for a long time, not opening the envelope immediately, just looking at it, as if inside it held not just a photo, but a piece of memory buried for 20 years. A part of the past I thought I fully understood but had only scratched the surface. And now maybe I had to look again. I drove out to the northern suburbs of the city on a cold, gray afternoon. Light rain dusted the windshield like specks of memory. The dirt road led to the old house, overgrown with trees, fallen leaves covering the stones carefully placed by my mother, one by one. The house still stood, the paint faded, roof tiles peeling, windows shut tight as if hiding something. No one had lived there since my mother died. No one spoke of it. I had avoided thinking about it, like an unhealed wound, as if touching it would open a pain I wasn't strong enough to face. I unlocked the door with the old key I'd kept on my personal keychain since I was 16. The door groaned a long creak, then swung open. Inside was thick with the smell of dampness and dust of time. Everything remained in place. Pale yellow curtains in the living room, the armchair where my mother used to read, a cracked porcelain vase on the shelf. I walked slowly through each room, running my hand lightly over tables, door frames, places marked by laughter, arguments, dinners for three that seemed never-ending. As a child, I thought my family was normal. A gentle mother, a busy father, a lively sister, and me, a quiet kid attached to my computer and little robot models my mother bought me. The basement was where I hadn't been since my mother passed. The wooden stairs creaked with every step. I turned on my flashlight, the yellow light illuminating peeling walls and rotten steps. The air downstairs was cold and heavy in a strange way. But in a corner near the brick wall, I saw a wooden chest covered with old cloths. I bent down and opened it. Inside were leather-bound journals, the paper yellowed with age. And a hard drive wrapped in a cloth bag with my mother's familiar soft handwriting on the outside. For Ava, if you want to know the truth. I sat down on the cold floor, my heart slowing as if waiting for something inevitable. I opened my personal laptop and connected the hard drive. The only folder that appeared was named Morgan. Before it belonged to him. I clicked on it. Recordings played. My mother's voice, warm and clear, punctuated by soft breaths as if telling a story just for me. She spoke about the early years, when she and Victor were engineering students, tinkering with programming, writing the first lines of code for a simple warehouse management software in my grandfather's garage. They pitched together, sought funding, and stayed up nights fixing system bugs. You know, her voice echoed in my headphones, the name Morgan Dynamics was chosen by me. I wanted it to represent motion, life, the connection between people and technology. I never thought about claiming control. I thought I was part of it. But everything changed when the company started turning a profit. She recounted the first meeting with investors in detail. Victor began separating signing authority from her, citing legal procedures. When she pushed back, he didn't argue. He silently changed system passwords, registered copyrights under his own name, then hired lawyers to cut her out of all intellectual property documents. That night, my mother said, her voice breaking, I stayed up until dawn trying to retrieve the original agreement. But everything had disappeared from the servers. As if I had never existed on that journey. A brief recording cut off, then resumed with my mother softly coughing and then taking a breath. You will grow up in a world where women can be turned into shadows even after building the whole foundation. I don't want you to hate anyone, Ava. But I want you to know that some battles don't start with you, but if no one speaks out, they continue from generation to generation. I sat there in the old basement, tears falling onto my sleeve without me noticing. Inside me was a smoldering anger, not because of betrayal but because I had allowed the story to be only half told for too long. My mother was not just the gentle woman in the kitchen or the one who held me when I failed. She was a co-founder, an engineer, the first mind behind an empire that Victor claimed all the glory for. I played the last file in the folder. It was a video. Mom sat before the camera, her hair streaked with gray, eyes sunken but still bright. If you find this, she said, perhaps you have walked a very lonely path. But you are not alone, Ava. In your blood is not only your father's name, but also the spirit of your mother, who dared to build a company even when the one she trusted most took everything away. I couldn't look at the screen any longer. I closed the laptop and hugged it to my chest. Outside, the rain had stopped. But inside me, another storm had just begun. Not only for me, but for her. And for all who have been silenced simply because they don't carry the name of the one in charge. The old Morgan Dynamics building was put up for public auction one October morning, when the leaves outside were turning a deep red. News of the company's bankruptcy spread across financial headlines, but none of the longtime investors wanted to touch a name sinking deeper into scandal, lost trust, and legal turmoil. I watched the process quietly, not through investment firms, without any intermediary holding the title. When the hearing for asset liquidation was scheduled, I requested to file directly, in my own name. That day, the commercial court was strangely silent. Not noisy like a criminal trial, but the tension was taut like a stretched string. I sat in the front row alone. No lawyer by my side. Every legal document I had prepared myself. Each item, each clause, each binding condition, clear and indisputable. Chloe sat 2 rows away. She wore a gray robe, her face pale, eyes sunken like someone who hadn't slept for days. My father, Victor, sat to her right, hands clasped tightly, his hair more silver than black now, gaze fixed on the floor. When the judge entered and the procedure began, I stood and presented my proposal to buy all tangible and intangible assets of Morgan Dynamics. The main office, subsidiary factories, brand name, customer databases, remaining source code, and all intellectual property registered under the company. My bid wasn't higher than others, but I was the only one willing to accept the remaining legal debts and committed to resolving all unresolved labor issues. The judge glanced around. No objections. He nodded, then asked, Ava Morgan, in your proposal, you request full authority over intellectual property. Do you intend to continue using the Morgan Dynamics brand in future operations? I looked up toward Victor and Chloe watching me. No, I answered. I will not continue using that name. A silence filled the room. Chloe tilted her head slightly as if she didn't understand what she'd just heard. The judge asked again, You mean, you will retire the brand? Yes, I said clearly. Morgan Dynamics will be removed from all systems, documents, and registrations. The assets will be restructured under a different legal entity. I don't want to build on a name that once stood for deception and dispossession. Victor looked up at me. For the first time in years, his eyes held no anger or contempt. Only silence without resistance. What will you do with those assets? The judge asked next. I placed a new file in front of him, thicker than the purchase proposal. After settling debts and fixed assets, I said, the remainder, including liquidation proceeds, profits from old intellectual property, and generated shares, will be transferred into a scholarship fund named Eleanor R. Morgan. That name made Victor close his eyes. The scholarship will support female students pursuing STEM fields, especially software engineering, artificial intelligence, and automation technology. The goal is so that no one like Eleanor Morgan, who had to leave the company she helped build, does so just because she was a woman. Chloe turned to me, her voice catching. You're planning to erase everything? The name, the past, the family. I didn't answer immediately. I looked straight at her, then slowly said, You can keep the past if you want. But to me, my mother's true legacy isn't in that name. It's in the belief that women deserve to be recognized as co-founders and co-creators, not as mere background for others to step on. Chloe covered her face with her hands. She started to cry, not shouting, not sobbing, just quietly shedding tears, as if for the first time in her life, she saw the harm she had helped cause without realizing it. I didn't turn away. I didn't comfort her. I let her sit there, facing what I had lived with for 15 years. The feeling of being overlooked, forgotten, erased from what I had helped create. Victor sat upright, hands resting on his thighs, eyes not meeting anyone's. When the hearing ended, he stood, bowed slightly to the judge, then quietly left. Without a word. I stayed behind, watching his retreating figure down the hallway. Something inside me lightened. Not revenge. Not victory. Just a deep release. Letting go of expectations, of the desire for my father's approval, of the hunger to reclaim what was lost. And in that moment, I no longer felt betrayed or hurt. I only saw my mother. Smiling, peaceful, standing beside me as an inseparable part of this journey. A final piece returned to its rightful place. 3 months after the hearing ended, Red Haven Logistics officially surpassed a valuation of $500 million. I received the news while sitting in the small garden behind the office, where Riley had planted a row of dandelions right beneath the new company sign. No cheers, no popping champagne, just a strange silence bathed in soft sunlight, as if everything that needed to be said was expressed simply by the company's very existence. That afternoon, Claire walked into the office holding a light brown envelope. There's a letter addressed to you, she said, no sender listed, but the handwriting looks elderly. I took it and slowly opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, familiar handwriting, not as firm as before but slightly shaky, with ink smudges from an unsteady hand. Ava, I don't expect your forgiveness. I'm not worthy. But if you ever truly loved your mother and if you're walking a path others might follow, then I hope you won't repeat my mistakes. Leading sometimes is simply knowing when to step back. Wishing you peace. Victor. I read every line slowly. No anger, no sarcasm, no expectations left. I folded the letter and placed it in the right drawer, the place where I once kept my mother's photo, now where I keep things that no longer need a reply. 3 days later, I arrived at Red Haven's Hall for the first scholarship ceremony named after Eleanor R. Morgan. When the car stopped in front of the grand lobby, I stepped out wearing a simple suit, carrying nothing but a small name tag pinned to my jacket. Ava Morgan, founder of the fund. No cameras, no reporters. Just the scent of fresh flowers from the main stage, soft light streaming through large windows, and the quiet chatter of nearly 100 young women, chosen from thousands of applicants nationwide. They were vibrant, each with her own story. One with long curly hair and round glasses, holding a recycled plastic robot model. Another with a gentle southern accent, just accepted into the data science program at MIT. A petite girl of Mexican heritage, shyly clutching a tablet containing her project on automated traffic in low-income neighborhoods. I walked up to the podium without a prepared speech. I simply looked at them, each eager face, slightly nervous to see me, not as the cold CO in a profile photo, but as a woman standing before them with all that remains intact after a long journey. I'm not standing here as a successful person, I began, my voice steady but soft. I'm here because I was once one of you. A few surprised eyes looked up. I was once seen as unfit for leadership. Told I was too technical, too quiet, too not the leadership type. I built a whole system that no one knew I was behind. I paused. But my mother, the namesake of this scholarship, was also pushed out of the very company she co-founded. She died before she could be called by the title she deserved. I glanced down at my badge. Today I carry no title. I carry only one thing. The belief that each of you, everyone sitting here, can rewrite the definition of value, of talent, of the right to build something from your own intelligence. There was some light applause growing stronger. I needed no more than that. As I stepped down from the stage, a young girl, maybe 18, approached me. Her voice was small but sure. Ava, if your mother could see you today, she'd be so proud. I put my hand on her shoulder and smiled gently. Not because of the compliment, but because for the first time I heard those words without pain. The afternoon passed like a quiet melody. I sat in the back row watching these young women share ideas, connect, laugh as if the world had always been a fair place. And in that moment I understood. My story was never about revenge. It was about ending a cycle. About lifting the burden off my mother's shoulders. About standing tall, keeping my own voice and passing on not power, but the right to begin, to others. Freedom in the simplest and most complete way. I don't know where you're listening to this story. Maybe in your car after work, in the kitchen while cooking, or on a quiet night when you need a voice beside you. But if you've ever felt cast aside, done everything and still been unrecognized, been overlooked by those closest to you, maybe this story isn't just mine. It took me many years to understand that justice doesn't always come under stage lights, and honor isn't in the place people give you, but in how you walk when you have nothing left in your hands. I don't need Morgan dynamics, but I need to know where my mother stood, and I need to make sure those who come after won't have to walk through the same pain. What about you? If you were me, would you choose to forgive, or would you leave a clear period like I did? I want to know what you think. Please leave a comment below. And if this story touches something in your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to hear more stories about the little things that can change a whole family, a whole life. Because sometimes just one person daring to stand up can change everything. And I believe you can be that person too.